Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is a show where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. Alright, I'm going to get down to business because today's episode is a little late on the topic matter, but I'm just going to sort of gun through the main topic of the watch list and then just sort of go into a little bit of what's in your head. Mainly because it's one of the two things requested. But before I do that, one thing that has been, there's two requests that have been put into the channel is, number one, to do more what's in your head, and number two, to try to be a little bit more direct in the title labeling of what the show is about. And I'm going to try to do both. It sort of takes a little of the fun out of the title labeling, but I can understand how some people might, for archive purposes, reviewing stuff, might find it a little hard to find certain topics or whatever. So I'm going to try to keep that in the forefront of my mind. So let's sort of go into the watch list. First off, I'm not in the Sky is Falling camp. And I think that's a big deal. Because normally I am that guy that's like, yo, WizKids done jacked up, man. They done jacked up. And I really can't say that. So that's number one. Number two, I could have said, I can say that there are some things that could have gone a little bit deeper but aren't. And I can accept that right now. We still have a lot of competitive time before Origins, and that I feel is something that we need to keep in mind, that we do have a lot of competitive time before Origins, so we can test some things out, see if some things are good, see if some things are bad, and sort of go from there. Now, with that being said, let's sort of jump into it. Let's start off with the boxing ring. The fact that you have to be completely in or out to either get the benefits or not get the benefits of it is just a clarification. And it also comes down to something in which I've said before. You don't introduce new mechanics inside of con exclusives. You just don't. It's bad policy. But lo and behold, they did it. There's no way to undo it. Should the -2 attack also be removed? I feel it should. Mainly because that is a massive cut to attack values, and it forces very defensive position games. The boxing ring isn't something that forces people to fight in it. It is something that makes people sort of camp in it, put their bodyguards around it and say, come at me, bro. Don't you want to fight? And I really don't think that's the nature of the boxing ring, of a boxing ring. I would definitely say if you're going to have -2 attack value to your opponent, you might as well just say they can't be targeted unless you go in the ring. And then you get everyone inside has +1 to melee attacks, or those inside the ring have a functional range of 2 or 4 for all game effects. I think that would then make people really think about the boxing ring and why are they actually playing it. It's either that or just make it a flat -1 attack, and I just think that would just be better. Going on to Jakeem Thunder. Jakeem Thunder losing shape change is one of the pick powers. I'm not sad. Is it disappointing? Yes. But you have to understand what WizKids is going through. People have been saying nerf Jakeem since Jakeem came out. And you functionally have had a whole year of a lot of Jakeem play. Do I understand why people are frustrated with Jakeem and feel that he needs to be toned down? Yes. Is shape change a defensive power? Yes. Were we getting our cake and eating it too with Jakeem? Yes. I just feel, in particular, when it came to them deciding on shape change, they were just noticing what is the most common combo with Jakeem, and what is the most safest way to play Jakeem is invincibility, shape change, and for him to be able to pick technically 2 defensive powers would be bad, because if he has invincible and shape change, he has a better form of impervious. He just does. So that is something to consider. In the long run, does that mean Jakeem is out the meta? No. Those people that say that, they're complete. They don't understand the state of the game. Definitely when it comes to limited, and even more so when it comes to constructed. And here's why. Simply put, once we're looking at limited, we're not dealing with any entities. Okay, so you just put the symbiote on him anyway. You can just use Loki staff anyway. You could still use Mirror Masolja anyway. Like hell, Mirror Masolja is way more OP. And now you have a really, really hard to kill Jakeem. And he still has access to shape change. And you just pick, I have invincible and plasticity. Okay, great. You have invincible and plasticity now. That makes you more annoying. Okay, so when it comes down to how Jakeem's being played, nothing's really changing. All that's going to happen is you're going to replace shape change with prob. And now you're just going to have invincible prob. And if he has prob on those clicks, it's going to be perplex. And he's going to perplex up his... Well, sorry, it's not going to be perplex. It's going to be plasticity. So, all in all, I really don't think this is a bad thing for Jakeem. I just think that we probably need to tailor back some of the expectations. Is Jakeem still, Lord Ruler of the metagame? No. He's not. And in particular with the arrival of the great king of the heavens, Unimind, he challenged the king of the earth, Jakeem, and soundly defeated him with his space technology. So there is that. So even with the nerfs to Unimind, he's really not nerfed, and I'll go into Unimind next. But let me finish up with Jakeem. All in all, where does Jakeem fall in the game right now? I look at him as the gatekeeper for S-Class. I don't think that he is the full-on, this indicates S-Class now. I think he's the gatekeeper. If you can't be better than Jakeem Thunder, you can't enter S-Class. I also think that with this change, it allows people to finally say, WizKids finally fixed Jakeem. And in doing so, they're going to feel less guilty playing Jakeem. There's a psychological game. It's look, but he got watch listed and nerfed, so he's okay to play now because he's toned down and fixed. And really, nothing's changed. So, overall, Jakeem has been knocked down a peg because people wanted him knocked down a peg. I don't think he was really overbalanced. I don't, in the sense that shape change or taking away shape change will definitely hurt how he's played, quote unquote. So I just look at it as this is the reality that we're in. When we go into worlds and we don't have entities anymore, you're just going to see him equipped with Mirror Masolja, Symbiote, Loki's staff, or some other piece of equipment that you're then going to just say that Jakeem is OP because he's able to pick the 2 best powers that work with this equipment, or he doesn't have to pick blank because he has it. That's just the case. So there's no really arguing that. Jakeem is still going to be an issue because he can pick 2 powers. And so we're always going to be frustrated with that flexibility. But at the same time, going forward, definitely once it goes to Origins, Jakeem won't have easy access to willpower. And that is going to be a game changer. Once retirement happens, Jakeem goes from S-Class, unless there's some new baller equipment that grants willpower, He goes from S class to A class. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Because once Jakeem starts to have to pick willpower, then it becomes difficult. And you could say, well, hey, he could still use Steel Energy and Thunderstrike at work. That could still work. And that can. And that can be a really nice little combo that's really interesting. But most players aren't going to do that because Thunderstrike doesn't provide defensive options that guarantee survivability. So that's one of my viewpoints. I know there are people that play a lot more aggressive than I do. And I can see people say, like, look, Thunderstrike is not the best defensive element if you're looking for a defensive element per cost. It's a nice sustain, but you're not guaranteed to get that off in this meta or whatever else. And there's a lot of other solid arguments for that. People can argue for Mjolnir. I can range, flurry you. And I think that would be really solid, definitely in the age of Unimind. Again, I more feel that you still have certain problems that you have to overcome with any piece of equipment right now, that I don't think that it just automatically grants you like a snap of the fingers and boom, now he's patched up and he's better than ever. I don't think that's the case. So let's go ahead and talk about Unimind. Unimind's 2 nerfs don't kick Unimind in the butt where he needs to be kicked, and that's the problem. That's realistically the problem. It does not kick him in the butt where he needs to be kicked. Now, him being able to +2 himself and other Eternals is what he should have had from the beginning. Him being able to have multiple levels of perplexes, that's a little bit OP, but okay, if it's not an Eternal, then it's a standard +1 or -1. Okay, that's fine. Now, I look at it as he still makes call-ins way more OP than Jakeem. And so let's put this in context. You have Unimind. Unimind can pick Prob from one of his sideline people, use 2 perplexes on a call-in, and in whatever form or fashion. And now he's able to prob, perplex up, 2 stats and whatnot. Jakeem to do the same thing has to pick enhancement and perplex. Leaves himself defensively vulnerable, where he could potentially be 1 or 2 shotted in that turn. And he has to pick perplex and enhancement. That is not as good. That means that your range attacker is definitely stationary. So or you can even say empower if you're able to be adjacent. So there are certain limitations that I see that should have been put in place that weren't, that still makes Unimind way, way better than what he should be. So then the next thing that we can look at with Unimind is that he can no longer pick powers on his opponent's turn, which I'm like, freaky-doo-da-day. Okay, nobody picks powers or does anything on their opponent's turn. Like ever. Why was this a good idea? Like no one thought about that. Taking that away makes the Unimind player have to make tougher decisions. So if they choose to hunt down a character and use hypersonic speed, they're not able to pick Invincible and keep having Invincible. So I think there is a positive to that makes Unimind teams potentially die faster. Or rephrase that. It gives potential for Unimind to die faster. Doesn't guarantee that he will die faster. Alright, now, once we understand that, we can sort of still assess, number one, for his point cost and accessibility, he's still the number one figure in the game. And I know some people will say, but the shredders, man. The shredders are going to just kill him. I'm like, no, the shredders do absolutely bupkis to Unimind, because Unimind can still pick Invincible and have Invincible and laugh at the shredders' faces and force them to actually, go body with them, which the shredders can sort of. If they can't plink, they have a hard time grinding down an opponent with actual attacks. And so I find the analysis, like shredders are king, I find that as a little bit juvenile, in the sense that once something got taken down, then automatically some of the next competitors are automatically on top, and I think that's foolish. And I've seen tons of random comments that just say shredders, 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 and it's like, no, as long as Unimind or any other character can pick Invincible, they don't have to fear shredders. Same with Jakeem. Now, what happens is that shredders don't just get immediately like nuked from orbit from Unimind's call-ins, which was happening before and is a bigger concern. So automatically right there we can see some immediate impacts. Now again, once we come down to Origins, Unimind takes a huge hit when we start talking about retirement, because Nick Fury will be retired. So his current deck of Yu-Gi-Oh cards are gone. He's with a smaller deck of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that may or may not be as good. Okay, so Grand Summoner Yu-Gi-Moto Unimind, he may not be in play. And I know we can say, like, look, man, we know there's a Storm ID card. That Storm, that prize support Storm, with that ID card is going to be killer. And I agree, it will be killer. But when all's said and done, and we look at what's being put in play, is that Storm able to carry you and automatically win you games as a Unimind player? And the answer is no. No. Okay? So, even if you were going to say, like, I'm going to perplex up Storm's attack and damage, or I'm going to perplex up Storm's damage twice. Okay, so she's going to running shot and pulse wave for 6. All right, that's good. Now, who are you going to follow up with on your Unimind team? Who else is your muscle on your Unimind team that you're going to, kill that character with? Oh, hey, we really don't have one? Oh, hey, Nighthawk Prime is gone, so my opponent also might have some silly way of boosting stats and other stuff. Oh man, let's look at that Storm real quick. How deep is heroclix? Oh man, I paid for this pulse wave. She's 7 clicks, so man, it's possible if I have a pulse waver of my own, I could potentially 2-shot her and take her down. As long as I'm able to pulse wave for 4, she's on energy shield deflection. You just need to punch her for 3. She's dead. So when we look at this, there's some big questions that are up in the air when it comes down to the viability of Unimind. And the number one that I feel that is there that has to be talked about is, once you take the deck away from Unimind now, after post watch list, you take the deck away, you limit his perplexes, how much does that force the player to actually play with Unimind as a member of his force and not as a mega support? Now, I could tolerate Worm as a mega support because his stats sucked. His stats sucked like a Dyson vacuum in Germany. Okay, like they were bad. Okay, but the problem the issue with him was he was able to compensate with a lot of weird effects, and so that sort of justified why his stats sucked. Okay, ID cards come in, and he's a great ID card summoner. Now, we take a step back, and we ask ourselves, if we added 15 more points to Worm, would he be great? And we were able to magically, tweak him up, and add 15 more points to Worm, would he be a great character? And the answer is no. It would take more than 15 points to make him a great character. And that's pretty much what we've done with Unimind. As we added 15 more points, we made him a great character. So, all in all, with Unimind's Perplex nerf, with his Pick a Power nerf, he has enough done to him to make us start to question, where does he sit in the sense of, what am I actually doing with him? Because for a majority of people, they don't have any clue what they're doing with them. Unimind is up there flapping his gums in the wind, trying to figure out life and philosophy, while having city life and country living. Okay, you don't know what you want with him. Is where my point is. Most players don't know what they want with Unimind because they want it all, and they don't know how to shift into utilizing. Is Unimind my main attacker? Is Unimind Joey Wheeler now of Yu-Gi-Oh fame? Is he my Valentine? Does he really need a Millennium Puzzle? He doesn't. But that's the thing. We got caught up in a tactic, then we said oh yeah, he can't do that tactic as well. He can still do the tactic, but he can't do the tactic as well. And so we're oh man, Unimind's trash, dog. He sucks. He can't do anything. Him and Jakeem are trash. You need to sell them to me each for $5 because they're trash figures. Yeah, there's people like that. So, anyway, like I said, there's too many factors right now that destabilize our certainty with the future of Unimind. But the intermediate for limited, Unimind's fine. He's more than fine. Some characters actually are able to touch his heavenly garments and suck some of the energy out of him, but that's about it. Other than that, he has a lot of tools at his disposal that make him hypermobile, that make him really indispensable in terms of support, and very survivable at multiple point ranges. So it all comes down to what is the overall tactic that you're trying to integrate with Unimind, and I think that's the big failure of the creativity of our community right now in our discussion of Unimind. Is we're so used to him working in one way, we don't see any other application of the tool. So anyway, I've berated everything on Unimind a little too long. Let's move to Haha Joker. Haha Joker needed to be nerfed. He needed to be nerfed the moment that we saw him. We knew he was unbalanced the moment that we saw him. The way that he worked, we already knew it was imbalanced. The fact that you have to roll from jump stump is great. It puts the player of Haha Joker in a not so guaranteed position, because if you know your guys are pushed and that Haha Joker is on click one, once you finish pushing your guys, you know that next turn your opponent is going to have to take damage. Sorry, you finished clearing your guys from being pushed. I apologize, I messed up. Your guys are pushed. You're clearing your guys, and you see that Haha Joker on click one. No matter what the Haha Joker rolls, in that next turn that it's going to do damage to yourself, and you have potential to score 10 points in that moment. And I think that's good. That is an essential element in the game that has to be there. For him to always be secure, knowing, hey man, are you going to do 6 damage or 7 damage to put me in a position where you gain 10 points and put yourself at tempo risk, it's not worth it. So that element of change is necessary. Him being masterminded onto thematically, I get it. Structurally in the game, I also get it. That's way too much health. That's way too much health and way too many attacks. That's able to be recovered from Haha Joker for you to overlook. And I think when you understand it from that perspective, that's when things start to readjust. I can purchase a 30-point Haha Joker and have him be my mastermind fodder for Jakeem Thunder at least through mid-game. And that's if he's played mediocrely. You know, not with no things on Haha Joker. The moment that you add in a Hulkbuster torso, it's pretty much guaranteed you're not going to kill Haha Joker. Okay. Now, if I want to be more aggressive with Haha Joker, there's other things that I can do in this game to make him more of a threat. Like just straight up be able to give him access to Blaze Claw's Fangs. Now he's a really big threat if he's able to land on his Flurry Click. But now he can't camp on his Flurry Click. So there are certain advantages and disadvantages that come up. You are in a chaotic state, which is the nature of the character, and I feel was the original nature of design. And he's not a bazillion health for no reason. He's still stout. Okay? He's still stout. And I think that's something that people are delusional on. They think that all of a sudden he becomes this fragile snowflake glass sculpture that appears once every 3,000 years during the red moon and of the winter equinox. Like no, man. It's not like that. The guy's still good. It's just folks are high. Again, because they're used to it being a certain way, and then they're like, darn whiz kids took away my OP stuff. And I say this as a man that wanted Super Skrull nerfed, who played a whole ton of Super Skrull. So, yeah. And eventually you're going to probably find a day where I'm mad about something else being nerfed. Hypocrisy becomes us all. I'll say it right now, including me. So there's bound to be a day where I'm like, man, I really wish they didn't nerf that because I enjoyed it being broke. I'm willing to admit that now. So, overall, we can automatically see with all these little changes that they brought the characters into play. Then they clarified and said, like, look, man, if I have a power and it says you can't use damage powers, that includes the powers that are on the dial and all the standard damage powers, no matter what, or defense, or movement, or whatever. I'm down with that. Because being able to pick a power, or the powers being off the dial, and those not working for the powers, but that shut them down, I thought that was sort of silly. Like, oh, look, my green arrow hits you. Oh, but wait, I have magical off-field invincibility shield. What? How? Well, guess what? Because I have invincibility from this BS trait, it gets to stand up against your special power. But wait, it's that power. It's just, not on the slot. And it's like, correct. So, yeah, I like that. It's going to bring a lot of characters in line, not just from the past, but in the future. Now, here's my issue. This is my personal gripe with WizKids on this one. You had to create a rule for something that should have been obvious from design testing. You had to create a rule from something that should have been obvious in design testing. And this is not a new issue. This is an issue that was there all the way back at Super Scroll. That was all the way back at Entities. That was all the way back at, hey, look, I have powers that are granted to me that aren't on my freaking dial. So, you've had years, and I emphasize that dirtily with my Ebonics, years to look at that concept and to be aware of that concept. And for you not to be aware of that concept is very concerning. That it took this stage of the game for you to finally say, like, oh, hey, we were trying to simplify everything, and why didn't we just obviously just say, hey, buddy, if it would be in a defensive slot and a power shuts off just defensive powers, then that too is shut off, no matter what the source is. And so there's some issues there. The number one issue that I look at is, what is the purpose of traits? What is realistically the purpose of traits? Because if traits are there so that I can have something the entire dial, fine. Initially, traits were something that were off dial that created a situation that I had something protected from outwit. That was the initial purpose of traits. Then traits evolved into wacky stuff that I get to do that don't involve special powers or might involve a special power. And then you start getting complex, quantum theses or theses on all sorts of different heroclix characters. And when that just started to become a problem in the nature of traits. So when I look back at game design and I look at the purpose of traits, and I remember this because I've been here for a long time, y'all whippersnappers. I've been here since Mutant Mayhem. Hadn't been here since the beginning, but I've been here for a while. You have a problem. Because, again, the whole concept of traits was to create a situation where a character can act like the character without fear of outwit. If game design has gone past that and said, traits allow us just to add an additional constant effect, then you need to be honest with us what the role of traits are. Because you haven't been. Okay, forgetting the fact that Unimind's traits overstep so many bounds. It's ridiculous. But I fear, all in all, that we are repeating the lessons of the game right before we had feats. And these are lessons that are hella old. And some of you might say, why feats? What's going on? Okay. On the official WizKids, this is OG founder WizKids website, Bromag's WizKids. Okay. 8C Realms is where the rebels are at. And the riffraff. Okay. During this time, you had a problem. And the number one complaint on both HC Realms and on the actual WizKids forums was the nature of outwit and how cheap characters, mainly cheap Batman and cheap Black Panther, could completely disarm characters that were, 3 times their point value or more with little consequence. And so, again, you got to remember, heroclix's initial selling point was you're playing an RPG-like game without any book or additional materials. Okay, that's no stat sheets. Okay, which we have completely thrown that concept away. I just want, again, history lesson. Okay, so the problem came in was, how were you going to solve this problem? of pretty much making characters ghetto power cosmic. And so Fortitude was invented. Okay? So here's what happened once Fortitude was invented. Outwit became crap. It went from godly to crap. All right. There were too many teams that if you had two main attackers, those two main attackers had Fortitude. If you had one big guy, that big guy had Fortitude. Did you have some other figure that potentially could be disruptive to your opponent's team? It has Fortitude. And the feat stacking, it abounded in multiple different ways. But realistically, what ended up happening was that feats became the ruling class of the game. That there was very little to be done. And that Outwit for the longest time had little effect on the game. Now there was something that I did like this cat named Savage Dragon brought up, is that the problem with Outwit is binary. It either works or it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything else. And so because it doesn't do anything else, it's either good or bad. There is no, well, hey, like it just degrades your power. And so the older I get, the more I start to side with, if you have a character and they are less than, half the point value of your outwitter is less than half the point value of the character that they're trying to outwit. When it comes to damage reduction, Impervious goes down to Invul goes down to Toughness. I'd be willing to say that Invincibility goes to Impervious goes to Invulnerability, and then Invulnerability goes to Toughness goes to nothing. That would be the degrading. And I feel like definitely when it comes to defense, then that would be viable. You can even say with shape change, it can operate. I mean, against shape change, it's like instead of 5 or 6, it's just a 6. If you have super senses, super senses would just be gone. And actually, come to think about it, if you're going to just get rid of super senses, you would just get rid of shape change too. But mainly, what it came down to is the problem of damage reduction and how much you pay for damage reduction. Definitely consistent damage reduction on a high point figure. A lot of inflation, people don't understand, a lot of inflation in points comes from power combinations, but also consistency of powers. So like the more you have a certain power on a character, the more expensive it becomes. It's more expensive to run 5 clicks of invulnerability than going impervious, invincible, impervious. It's just the way the formula is. So anyway, just going back, with the ruling on, hey, look, these are how these negation powers work. From that little statement, they indicate that they have more negation characters coming. So we're not just looking at Nick and Green Arrow as being these characters. There's more coming, which I think is good for the game. But again, we're stuck back asking ourselves the question, what's really the balance of negation in this game? And what should be the firm boundaries of that? And then where is game design responsibility of making sure that elements that can't be negated are not abusable? And I think that's something in our narrative and in our conversations that we haven't really talked about. What is the responsibility of game design to present elements that are pocketed, that are protected from being jacked with? And making it clear, like, look, what's your responsibility in this area? And I know we can easily throw the bone to game design. I mean, not game design, to playtesting and say playtesting isn't doing their job. But if game design doesn't implement what playtesting says, then playtesting is not culpable. All right, so we have a problem, but no one wants to talk about the problem, and in part because it requires WizKids to talk about game design, which they don't do. Let me take that back. That's not fair. They don't dialogue on game design because, in all honesty, right now, I don't think there's anybody in the heroclix journalistic community, or you could even say podcasterville, that would suck up to WizKids the way that WizKids would want to be sucked up to in that type of interview, or be very lenient and softball them questions. And I say that because when I look back at their appearances, I realize that most of the questions when they're talking on camera about anything are very light. And I understand that from a PR perspective. I'm not stupid. But whenever we were, like the one time we were able to actually have a serious conversation with WizKids about the nature of design was back before Nick Fury, the year Nick Fury came out, so 2 years ago, 2016 at Origins. That's the last time that we've actually seen a dialogue on heroclix, and in part, I will admit, the conversation was honest. You could also say, like, you could sort of see, hey man, he's a little bit behind the 8 ball. But at least he was honest on a lot of things. And the problem I feel is when you're forced to actually address some things up front, you don't want to be like, look, hey man, we caught you in a PR lie. And I think that's a problem. But anyway, I really think one of the major issues is, and I've said this previously, the growth of WizKids as an organization has not marched in scale with their profits, and all of their properties are showing such. And for the game to be healthy and trends to be, to be managed, it's beyond a playtesting community's responsibility. There needs to be dedicated people to this game and this game only. They shouldn't be also working on, Star Trek and then, working on, Dice Masters and then working on this other thing. Like, no, just chill on heroclix. Just have a guy, all he does is chill on heroclix and look at the feedback from the playtesters. Look at the feedback of the community. Look at the rock results and seeing how we are actually playing. Not what game design wants us, how game design wants us to play. What are we, the players, actually playing? I think that's important. But I think there's a lot of elements, if we really look at it, that it just comes back to is, can we trust WizKids to uphold their bargain and make elements that are not negatable, just making sure that those elements are balanced. And then giving us the option to counterplay against other elements. And if we can't counterplay, then we're able to downgrade. And I think that's pretty much the only feature that we have. Because the problem I see going on with the negation powers as they are, you can say, yay, outwit, and then power cosmic protects you from outwit. Great. Okay, that's completely fine. As long as that little balance changes, we don't have mass negation. But once we start incorporating other effects, then we're back asking ourselves again, how valuable is power cosmic? So let's take, Prize Support Storm again. Take away Power Cosmic from her dial. How much is she realistically worth? Take away Power Cosmic from her dial. How much is she realistically worth? And no adding willpower or anything like that. And I would clearly tell you she's worth somewhere between 115 to 125 points. 105 is pushing it really too low, and 130 makes her slightly overcosted. Okay. For that many clicks, what she does, her damage values, you're looking at a character that doesn't necessarily lose a lot of steam if Power Cosmic is taken away. Her higher point values are definitely a lot more sturdier with Power Cosmic, but without it, they're not. Now she becomes really fragile, and now things start to become like ridiculous. So if we look at that and then we say like, wow, now I can outwit this on her and outwit that on her, and oh wait, near the end of her dial she gets outwit, and so now she's doing these things. You can start to see like a role of a character like that degrade like very quickly, because there's no way to protect your offensive stance for more than one turn with how fragile she is from a stat perspective in particular, and then also from a powers perspective slightly. But like I said again, is if negation gets out of hand, what always happens is that we fall back and compensate on stats. And then you start looking at characters that have a minimum of an 18 defense. And so definitely if you would say this Storm outside of an ID card, no one would ever play her. No one would ever think in their right mind of playing her at either point value, because her stats aren't good enough to really maintain offensive presence. And you can say like, hey, but Dark Logos at 100 points, she has an 18 defense and perplex. I'm like, yeah, but she has toughness and a 10 attack and 3 damage. That's not good. So, I mean, like I said, in the end, we have some complex questions that we need to ask about ourselves in game design. And even more so, I think, about the creativity of our player base and really, like, seeking to reinvigorate witty invention. And, yeah, that's the best way I could put it. Seeking to innovate with witty invention. All right, I'm almost at an hour, so let's just sort of go into the like what's in your head thing. A lot of people are going to talk about New Year's resolutions, and I'm going to do all these great things. And what I would tell you is, don't do that. I've stopped doing New Year's resolutions for over 3 years. And one of the main reasons why I stopped doing New Year's resolutions is that I would have these New Year's resolutions, and I would go through them, and then January 2nd, I would check off what I did, what I didn't do. And I found, most of the time I did like 60% of my list. And that 40% just made me feel horrible. Again, sort of going back to what I've said in previous conversation, is that our minds focus on the negative, and we latch on to those things. So I would be disheartened going forward. And so then I had grand goals at first, and grand goals turn into, mediocre and goals, and then eventually small goals. And even hitting 80% one year as a teenager. The 20% just tore me up because they didn't seem to be impossible things for me to do. They were just things that I didn't do because I didn't want to do them. They were things that I didn't do because of lack of diligence. Now, I mean, there's something that could be said about that. But what I would just tell you is like, I would spend this year, if you haven't, write down your life goals. Write down your 5-year, your 10-year goals. Write down some things that you want to see happen in your life. It doesn't matter how long it takes for you to get there. On my current goals, I have them in my bathroom on a piece of paper, and it's right next to my mirror, in between, my toiletries and my mirror and my sink. And I look at this goal list, and on the goal list is to be a better uncle, to be a better nephew, to spend more time with my mom and dad, to make Phoenix Nest one of the best groups in heroclix. There are a bunch of things on that list. And one thing that I found was, like, over the years of working on that list, there are points and times of personal reflection throughout the year that when I'm taking inventory of myself, I'm seeing where I'm succeeding in my list and where I'm failing in my list. And I ask myself, is my list just too big for the amount of time that I have? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I started to realize is that many times we have grand aspirations. We lack patience. We lack focus. And then we're mad that we didn't end up where we were supposed to end up at in the time frame that we thought we were supposed to end up there. And I know from a person that's took more than one trip around the backside of the mountain, okay, that the short way does not necessarily mean that you arrive prepared. And it doesn't mean that you arrive capable of dealing with the challenges from moving from the stage that you arrived at to the next stage that you're inevitably going to go to. Because I know this, if people were content to stay at the position of champion and could magically stay there, then no one could dethrone those people. And I want to make that very clear. If a person thought like, I'm a champion and I'll always be a champion, I don't need to work anymore. Just imagine if that went down and they were able to stay a champion. What would that say about, those around them? I have a lot of respect for people that have taught me a ton of things about this game and about life. But when it comes down to it, one thing I had to be honest about myself, definitely going forward is to present the conflict honestly, to present the competition honestly, and not look to virtue signal is the modern way of doing it, or to say, look how good I am. Look, I'm doing the right thing. Look, I'm being nice to you. Look, I'm a good person. Instead of just being honest and saying, like, look, my drives right now do not put me in certain positions to make certain decisions. And a lot of us end up compromising our goals and our values and things like that, primarily because we want to be looked at as just good people, that we're part of the quote-unquote group. And that's one of the costs of that, is for that moment of somebody saying, he's a good person, for whatever little that means, and whatever little that's valued, you're willing to derail your major dream. So I put this in context more personally for me. And I'll have two stories. And I'll wrap this up. And both of them are Rocktober, so that's sort of funny. At a Rocktober, which will not be dated, I played a player. And I had positioned in a certain way or whatever. And I really hadn't thought about it. And this guy made a statement like, oh, I can't hit this piece, I can't hit this piece, I can't hit this piece. And so he does a series of actions and then eventually realizes that he could hit my piece. And he asked to take an action back. Now, in the back of my head, I was like, I can't let him do that, or else if he hits, then I'm in trouble. There's no way for me to win this game. Definitely because of time and everything else. But he's like, come on, man, come on. I'll let you take things back, blah, 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 blah. And I succumb to the pressure, and I let him take it back. He takes the shot, hits my character, who had a ridiculously high defense. I was unable to prob it, and he won the game. Now, losing that game set me up in a series of events to go against a bunch of teams that were not good for me to face. They were all squirrely Outlander teams, not mainland meta teams, which I was designed to counter. So I did not make top 32. So in that one event, in that one game, a year's worth of work and a previous day of high level competitive play and struggle, where it's all negated by being a people pleaser and allowing this opening to occur, because I wanted to be seen as a good person, quote unquote. Another thing, sort of happened this past October on stream. Played my co-captain, Wes Griffin. And we've talked about this. And I played on the... we played in semifinals in the first round. So you automatically know, like, both of us didn't really want to face this early. And it's not like we haven't faced each other in tournaments before. But this matters. This is what we built our season on, and the fact that we know this this game can set the tone for the rest of this tournament for us. So it's like, all right, so we have our exchange before the game. No poop given. There's a more extreme version of that, but we keep it PG-13 around here. And we sit down, and I have a Mystical Jakeem team. He has a Beta Ray Bill team with Nick Fury. And we had conversations before. Some of the conversations weren't recollected by Wes. And Wes told me and when we had the magical theory talk, that he has solutions for everything that I had. So I was like, all right, well, he has solutions for everything that I have. I don't think it'll work out that great, but he does, so let's see how it goes. And I was able to get borrow the dungeon map. So I was running a Mystical Jakeem theme team with Enchantress, which is the hard counter to Beta Ray Bill. Because I made the prediction that there were going to be more Beta Ray Bill teams. I was wrong. But I knew I had teammates with Beta Ray Bill teams. So I was like, oh yeah, most people on my team are smart. We talked about all these Beta Ray Bill teams. Other people ought to, realize it whatsoever, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I'm mystical team. He's not. I win map. I put him on the dungeon map, and we start to play. And I move up semi-aggressively. He moves up very aggressively. Excuse me. And he plans to, like, drop ship with his Green Lantern, like the number 50, 55-point Green Lantern, on top of my people. And I know this. And so I move out Enchantress. And I'm like, and you move, you move, you move, you move, you move, you move, you move. None of y'all are touching the Green Lantern, and none of y'all have sidestep. So, yeah. And then I finished moving my guys together and walled off the interest that he could to, get in to get me. And so, he blows a wall and tries to get everybody next to his Green Lantern again. And then I'm like, okay. So at that moment was really his only moment. Like, he should have just took what he could get and then just drop ship on top of me and try to fight from there. But he didn't. So he tried to get her next to his transport. I did. You move, you move, you move, you move, you move, you move. And because he blew the wall, I was able to hypersonic speed and start attacking figures and maneuver characters through the hole so I could just attack them a lot easier and whatnot. The entire time while I was doing that, I could see my friend getting frustrated. And I started to pull back. I killed some things. I killed like one or two things. And if I had gone hard against him and fully determined to wipe out my friend and got bloody with it, I would have been placed better. He wouldn't have felt like I was mocking him and treating him lightly and playing him with kid gloves on stream in front of everybody. And a lot of stuff that happened after that wouldn't have happened. Why, but you could say, but Dark Logos, you went light on your friend. You didn't try to embarrass him on stream. It's like, but no, I was being a bit of a showman. And I was using that to compensate for my anxiety of playing against my friend and dealing with it on stream. And I knew the moment that he sat down and I put him on that map, he did not have a good chance of beating me. Just because Enchantress is broken. Not like Unimind broken. But in the matchup, she's just broken. She shuts the team down too hard. And so, I'm not going to say I'm going to lose my friend over this match. But it strained some things for a bit. It's fine now. But it strained some things for a bit. Considering we have like business meetings there, after once for October is done and a bunch of other stuff and deciding who we're going to recruit and why. Like, that's not stuff that you need. And so, like, I present it to you like this. I give what I would deem as small stakes. This is a game. But if I went and told you real life things that I did in the pursuit of trying to be a good person that put me in worse situations, you would be like, there's some things that I really need to reflect on as a person. So that's it for today. I thank everybody for listening. I'm just going to wrap it up. You can, all the good stuff. Follow me on Twitter. Hit subscribe. Email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's it. Thank you for listening. And remember, we all have to start over sometime.